Welcome to Deloitte's Technology, Media and Telecommunications Predictions webinar. My name is Darrell Hanbury and I lead our TMT industry group here at Deloitte in Ireland. Firstly, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us. We understand that we've lots of things going on and many mediums to connect, and we're delighted that you've chosen to connect with us here today. This webinar will be the deep dive into the latest and greatest in terms of trends and innovations within the technology, media and telecommunications industry. Throughout the webinar, we'll be covering topics such as the latest advancements in wireless technologies, what's coming down the line in advertising video on demand, right sizing within the technology industry, generative AI, and a couple of other topics thrown into boot. We'll also be joined by Ryan Owens, Managing Director for Google Shopping. Ryan joins us today for the TMT Predictions segment on the future of social shopping. First up is our predictions segment with Paul Lee, our Global Head of Insights for TMT at Deloitte, and he's going to be joined by my colleagues Louise and Gillian. So I'm going to hand over to Louise now.
Thanks, Darrell. So Paul, let's start with the telecoms sector and predictions. 5G has been topical for quite a while, and this year we're predicting that we'll see 5G smartphones with a price point of less than $100. Is 5G actually valued? And if not, I suppose, how are companies reacting to that?
I think the general view is it's a bit concerning that it's not valued more. And on the point of $100 smartphones, that's mostly going to be applicable in emerging markets, and it's great because it brings it to a new price point. And also it means you can put it into new form factors, so you could have home modems with 5G. You can also have perhaps more industrial equipment with 5G. But we are not where we expect to be in the industry right now.
And Paul, how important do you think 5G fixed wireless access will be in Europe, say, over the next 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, so in terms of connecting homes, so the big question is how much bandwidth do homes need? It's a massive, massive question that nobody really wants to answer. So historically, there's always been a disconnect between supply and demand, but it's always been supply chasing demand. So we've always wanted more and more bandwidth, but we're at the point now where we've probably got enough. So with 100 megabits per second to the home, you probably have enough. But the offer is of a gigabit, so 1,000 megabits. So you've got this cleft between what the industry is moving towards and what consumers are doing, are saying is, it's enough. This will do for me. I can have like 2 Netflix sessions and I can work from home and the kids can be on social media and we've got enough. So that's a challenge there. But for the fixed wireless access over mobile, if the rate of growth and demand for bandwidth slows, then the opportunity for fixed wireless access becomes really big. Right? And the reason for that, when you've got a cellular connection to the home, if you've got a surplus, then fixed wireless access works as a business model. So it works as long as you have that surplus. Now, if the rate of growth in demand for applications slows down, then that period of opportunity could be 10, could be 20 years. That's what we don't know at the moment, but it's a really big question out there. And this is something that the industry is looking at.
That's great, thanks, Paul. And over to you, Gillian, on screens and media predictions.
So taking it a bit closer to home and our hearts and minds in the current environment, our TMT predictions suggest a shift in the revenue model for broadcasting. Paul, could we be going back to the old cable TV model with AVOD?
Yeah, so I've been doing this job for about 22 years, and one thing I always notice is nothing ever changes in some regards. So a lot of our behaviours are quite hard-baked. So a lot of business models, I think, are quite inelastic, and there is, in a sense, a need for aggregators of content. So there is one view, which has been the prevailing view, that what consumers want to do is create their own bundle of content. But it could be, and this is something which is emerging more, in the US and also in Europe, that we're moving back to having an aggregator, bring together different amounts of content, providing a single bill and taking the hassle out of content. So at the moment, for example, if you've got multiple VOD providers, they may each be a different app on your TV. Now, for some people, that's progress, but if you're a consumer and you're tired at the end of the day, you don't want to have to be going in and out of different apps and perhaps entering new passwords to go from one program to another. You want everything together. You want a single search bar. And this is one of the trends which is happening. Now, in terms of the advertising part of video on demand, the benefit of that, I think, is really just to shave off some of the cost. You know, we've all had challenges around cost of living, you know, with energy prices going up, and you know, in the UK where I'm from, like, food inflation is really rampant. So advertising takes some of the sting off some of the cost of content.
Yeah. Really interesting. Thanks, Paul. Moving along to our next prediction. We were looking today around live sports and SVOD. So we're predicting that sports could be the next arena for streaming wars, with an expected $6 billion this year for exclusive major sports rights across some of our global markets. But we're also predicting some challenges with that. Where do you think they will play, and do you think we'll see sports leagues creating their own streaming platforms?
Yeah, so in terms of the $6 billion, it is significant. You know, it's a big number, $6 billion. It's worth noting, though, a lot of that's being spent in the US, which is a enormous market. So the ad market alone in the US is $70 billion for TV. The amount paid per 1,000 viewers is often about $70, whereas in Europe it's often closer to 10. You know, so it's not close at all. So the US market has certain features which make certain business models work there and don't export anywhere else because the economics are really different. So some of the really big deals, for example, for American football, have partly been because it's addressing the US market, partly because it's American football, which is the most valuable franchise, and partly because they're over 10 years. So, of course, the number is really big. And in a headline, you'll have the biggest number possible, but you need to look beyond that. The $6 billion is out of about $50 billion in total, so it's significant, but also what it guides is it probably won't get much bigger. And also the US deals are renewed every 10, 11 years, so it won't be till the 2030s till you find out whether the amount's going to go up or not. So that's one thing there. Now, in terms of whether sort of local sports organisations should be using SVOD, it's a good question. So you can do, but you limit your audience as a result of it. And if you've got an emerging sport, then what you want is coverage. So you probably want to go for broadcast above everything else. And if you've got some of the principal sports moving behind a paywall, but consumers still want to watch contests, particularly sporting contests, then that's your opportunity to get, say, onto a national broadcaster and get the coverage and get the awareness. So, for example, women's elite football, then basically right now you don't want to go behind a paywall. You want to get as much awareness as possible because you're still on the up ramp and it will take 20, 30 years to get really, really stable. So you want the awareness and you want to take every advantage that you can do.
It's interesting that you say that. Our own GAA organisation runs a subscription-based service called GAA Go. So do you think we'll see that trend?
I think what you need to have is you need to pick your business model carefully because so if you go behind a paywall, you can get a lot more per viewer, but you might have a lot fewer viewers.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be that calculation that you have to make. And then also what you can do is you can have certain coverage which is paywalled and certain coverage which is free. So to give one example, lots of individual, let's say, football matches will be behind a paywall, but the summary on a Saturday evening will be free. So you get a bit of both. And so for the sports teams and for the leagues which convene them, they maximise their revenues. But you need to get the balance right. You can't go for outright pay TV too early.
Well, very exciting. Thank you for that. I suppose next, we couldn't talk about screens and media without kind of touching on virtual reality and headsets. So we've seen real interest over 2022, and our predictions show, significant growth expected in kind of VR sets of 50% over the next year. So what's next for VR and VR headsets? What do we see requiring change to really kind of bring it into mass adoption and bring it into kind of the next genre of virtual reality?
Yeah, I mean, the basic rule with any device is basically you need to have a good device and content to bring out the best of it. That is a fundamental rule. And so you need to attract content creators, and content creators will always create for the biggest addressable market in general. You'll have some exceptions, but generally you want the biggest addressable market, partly because you're looking for the monetization and partly because you want the status. So it's a blend of the two. And so you've got this chicken and egg situation with VR, which is the bigger the user base, the more content creators that you will be able to attract to your platform. And it's a really hard balance to get right. It's really hard to get the momentum changing for that. And we had predicted growth in the VR market, but it's utterly contingent on the availability of content. And so if I look at, say, smartphones, so I expect today there'll be about probably 4.5 billion smartphones that are used globally, probably for an average of about 3 hours. So if you're building a game, you've got this vast addressable market, and say even if half of people don't play a game, you've still got 2.25 billion people. And your game can go viral pretty easily. Right. And people carry these devices with them all the time, and it's just not the case with VR. So the user base, the regular user base with VR is a lot smaller. So you've got this challenge there. And if you look at the size of the app stores for VR, there are a few thousand, and then for smartphones there are a few million. It's quite a difference. It's quite the cleft.
It's interesting, and it brings the question around new economies and new use cases to really drive adoption. Is there a sense in terms of what that might look like and what might be needed to monetize that at scale to address this content issue?
Yeah, I mean, you've got this fundamental challenge of if you don't have many people using a particular device, any device, you will really struggle to get content creators unless you fund them. And there is no simple way around it. There's no simple way around it.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. So I'll pass you back to Louise now, who's going to take us through a little bit around artificial intelligence.
Great, thanks, Gillian. Yes, so Paul, one of the predictions in the semiconductor space is talking about the use of artificial intelligence will allow chip design to be kind of faster, more efficient, cheaper. But I suppose I want to talk about generative AI, just given that it's, I suppose, so topical at the moment. And as we kind of help organisations on their data transformation journey, generative AI is obviously a component of that. But I suppose, what do you think the steps that companies should be taking to prepare for it, and also maybe to mitigate against some of the dangers that it brings?
Yeah. I mean, generative AI has just flourished as a topic like nothing I've seen before, probably in the last couple of decades. I mean, it's amazing how fervent the interest has been in generative AI. And the products haven't really been out since last December. And I remember talking to somebody who just joined a generative AI company as a CFO back in September. I remember thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. And so after the meeting, I had to go and look up what they were doing. And I went, oh, okay. So you type in some words and you get a picture generated out of it. I remember thinking, wow, that is really impressive, because it just feels like an amazing hack, an amazing productivity improvement. And we've had probably 50 conversations with companies around generative AI over the course of this year. And so a lot of people are excited about it. I think a lot of people are in the phase of excitable dabble. It's that phase. And the big question is, at what point does it become a repetitive behaviour? And then what does it do to business models? So at one level, to give one example, so an advertising company I was speaking to, they were saying, so they used to have illustrators, say 15 years ago, to create a storyboard, and then they used digital storyboarders. And now they're just using a generative AI tool, and it's a few words and the photograph emerges. And they can go, I want it with this blend of people, and shot as if it were taken on a smartphone, because that's what younger people like. And you get that output, and it's photorealistic, and it's stunning when it works. And so they're going, so what do we do with all these people who we've hired to do that role? So that's one level. And then they're also saying, but then who owns the output from this? And in the US, a machine cannot create copyrighted content. And if you're creating an ad campaign for a client, then generally you give all the collateral, you transfer the IP to them. But you can't, because no one owns the IP. So this is where, for example, like the law in the US is not aligned with the technology.
Okay, that's interesting. You kind of mentioned, I suppose, kind of the area of regulation, and obviously across tech, there's been a lot of regulation, kind of as business models have changed, etc. We're obviously working with a lot of companies in terms of the EU Digital Services Act and the UK equivalent. But it's also in terms of the area for AI and kind of including generative AI. So how do you see that playing out? Like, I know there's some kind of EU initiatives at the moment, but where do you see that going?
Yeah, I think what will need to happen is, so with regulation, ideally you have regulation that can stand the test of time for like 5 years, 10 years. And I think with one thing about generative AI is there are so many new facets to it which are being announced each week. And partly it's because there are lots of vendors out there which have been storing this up, and they're being rushed in some cases to release some of the new content and some of the new capabilities. But you will need to have regulation which is reviewed at a faster cadence than you've had in the past. And so the whole process in which you would come up with new laws may need to be adjusted to be able to cope with the pace of change of generative AI. And the thing is, at the moment, we've got like this flurry of activity, and partly because you've got a coalescence of technologies which are all coming in at the same time. And it may be that you don't get this again for another 5 or 10 years. But certainly, to keep up with generative AI, you need to have another way of formulating regulation.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, great. Okay, Gillian, over to you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Louise. Poll predictions this year, they show growth across network capabilities, broadcast media, AR, VR advances, generative AI, and indeed edge computing. So all demanding significant investment and really driving energy consumption. So, given the priorities on climate and on the drive towards achieving net zero, are we seeing the tech industry really drive initiatives that really address sustainability, or is it really about reducing energy costs?
I think it's a bit of both, and I think you need to have both in place. And sustainability is definitely a very mainstream topic. But if you look at, say, chief sustainability officers, how prevalent are they? And when they do exist, how much power do they have? Now, companies will always react to costs. And so when you've got a shift in a cost base in the way that we've had with energy, and probably in Europe, you're going to have energy costs remain at an elevated level relative to prior to 2022. So you may get wholesale costs being 3 or 4 times for the long term. So that really is your kick in the backside, if I'm allowed to say it on this, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to really look at input costs and accelerate projects which you may have had on the back burner. So, one very, in a sense, like boring example is, there are copper telephone networks. And so with those, power goes all the way through them and it makes your phone ring. And it's inefficient. And if you move to fibre optic networks, the energy usage is a lot lower. And also you need to have like the really big exchanges which need powering, etc. So telcos, the telecoms operators have had really significant increases in energy costs. And they also need to turn off their copper networks. So this is effectively a catalyst to make that shift. And I find, there are lots of changes which are a blend of sustainability, efficiency, and also even things like cybersecurity. So if you think of the lanyard, which we've had for decades, think of all the materials required to create lanyards. And then certain people will not wear them, so the benefit of lanyards goes away. But you could use your smartphone as an entry card, and that technology exists today almost everywhere. People don't leave their smartphones behind, and they're more secure because they've got better authentication than a lanyard. And the lanyards get stolen to order. They are a risk, right? But phones, people look after.
Yeah.
So you can do sustainability, you can do cyber, you can do productivity, and it's great that all those benefits are intertwined.
Yeah, I quite like the sound of that. There's been a game shift in terms of the mobile and payments mechanism. So
yeah, it's almost 90% in some markets
Yeah.
of transactions are going over phones, and they're more secure. Because if you think like a PIN number, you can oversee,
yeah,
and I can see your PIN number on there, for example. But with sort of like facial authentication, that's
Yeah.
a 3D image of your face, you can't spoof it.
yeah, absolutely. No, that's really interesting. And I suppose what other areas were really important for the tech organisations to focus on as they look towards addressing?
There's always going to be better design to make processors work better. And one thing that's been happening over the last 10 years is the development of, so it's customized silicon to do specific tasks. So data centers have proliferated over the last 10 years, but their energy usage hasn't, because there have been chipsets designed specifically to do certain functions, and we'll see more and more of that. So expect more of that will come through. But also what's happening is, for example, there are some major vendors, so smartphones, which are helping their supply chain move to renewable energy.
Okay.
And they're using some of their commercial heft as well as their intellectual knowledge to help make that migration. And I think that's quite important. I also don't think you can rely on the consumer to make the sustainable decision necessarily. So consumers will often say, yeah, I care about the environment, I recycle every now and then. But in terms of, say, making a choice about a smartphone, they will almost never make a smartphone choice on the basis of sustainability. But because of the vendor, you may actually get the right outcome.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that our predictions suggest that we may see that commitment from tech companies kind of really leading the charge over the coming years.
Yeah, they are doing it. They are doing it.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So, listen, thank you very much, Paul. I'll hand back over to Louise maybe to discuss some of our M&A
Great, thanks, Gillian.
predictions.
So, Paul, over the last 9 months or so, we've seen an increased focus across the tech sector on cost cutting, right sizing in terms of employee numbers. Some companies focusing more on their core business operations. We might see some divestitures, I suppose, as part of that. What's your view, I suppose, in terms of what we've been seeing and what we might expect, I suppose, over the next while?
Yeah, I think in the last 3 years we've had a couple of really big anomalous events, which have coincided with COVID. So one of them is the reversion of interest rates to a long-term normal level. So we had ultra low interest rates from about 2009. And because memories are short, you forget that this is anomalous. And we had ultra low interest rates because of COVID. And also because of COVID, we had people who couldn't go out, couldn't go on holiday. So the savings ratio spiked. And so you got lots of distorted behaviours molded by external circumstances, but they were taken as long-term behaviours. So because of that, you had too much money invested, say, in e-commerce, and you had too much money invested, let's say, in devices. And last year in particular, what you had was a reversion to not just a norm, but like a swing of the pendulum back to let's go out on holiday, let's go and see that concert, because you've got, effectively an escape from lockdown. And whilst we don't want to admit it, it was a form of incarceration. And humans hate that. So that's why the behaviour swung the other way. So the inevitable response to that is, and companies which acquired too many people are shedding them. But it's worth always comparing the numbers we've got now in say, tech companies to what we had in 2019. So I would not compare to 22, 21 or 20. You've got to go to 2019 because we had a enormous exogenous event in 2020, and that will continue to shape, I think, businesses and economies over the next couple of years. So it won't be till probably 2025 that we get back to a steady state behaviour. And so we'll get rationalisations of companies up till then.
Yeah, and I think certainly in the last while we haven't seen, maybe it's the really large deals, but there's still kind of quite a level of activity kind of in the mid-market around kind of M&A, and I think we'll see a little bit more of that, for some of the reasons that you've kind of talked about there.
Yeah, I mean, M&A is it's part of it's part of life and death of economies, and so you can't defer M&A for long. You have to have the sizing and resizing of companies, and it will be happening. So if I know that there's been like an interruption to it, but it's an aberration as opposed to steady state.
Yeah. Paul, thank you very, very much. That's been great. Really enjoyed your perspectives there. Now passing over to Nicola and Graham, who are going to be speaking with Ryan from Google.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Deloitte TMT Predictions webinar on social shopping, a topic that excites us from a business perspective, but also from a consumer and personal perspective. I'm delighted to welcome our panel today. Firstly, my name is Nicola Grant. I'm a Director in Clients and Industries, focused on our TMT sector. I'm delighted to welcome our panel today, so my colleague Graham Kinsella from Customer and Marketing Consulting, and Ryan Owens, a Director from Google Shopping. Ryan is a long-term Googler, a Google employee. Having entered the company as a graduate in 2004, he's worked across multiple parts of the Google business. The majority of his 19 years have been in the advertising space. He has also worked across ops and product. He has also spent 7 years in search quality to enhance how Google search results are shown to users. The mix of engineering and his business roles have allowed Ryan to build that expertise across the core of Google. Ryan currently manages Google Shopping for Europe, leading a standalone business entity in Google as Comparative Shopping Services. He heads a cross-functional team across marketing, finance, strategy and operations to service thousands of the largest retail clients in Europe. He also leads the charitable giving team for Google Ireland in partnership with google.org, helping to bring millions of dollars of donations and volunteer time for charities across Europe. Wow, Ryan. It's wonderful to welcome you here today to our Deloitte studios to discuss all things e-commerce and social shopping. And it makes a nice change, or a change the first time we first met almost 16 months ago in a maternity ward, where I welcomed our final edition, a little girl, and you welcomed your little boy. It'll be interesting to see actually how our social behaviours and shopping experiences have evolved with our new treasures. I, for one, can say after having 3 boys and then a little girl, Raina, that she has a very strong, sustainable wardrobe in place for spring, summer, thanks to the powerful big giant of commerce. So welcome, Ryan.
Lovely. Thank you, Nicola. And yes, it has been a wonderful 16-month journey. So very strange meeting in a maternity ward and ending up here 16 months later. But the same for me that Davin, my son, is inspiring a lot of my social purchases online. So just last week, I wasn't even in the market, but I ended up purchasing a pair of shoes for him because he's gone through his first pair of shoes. He's constantly climbing the stairs. So yeah, he's keeping me on top of the social commerce ladder.
Brilliant, good stuff. So let's get started. The Deloitte TMT predictions highlight that social commerce is transforming our social shopping experiences with an anticipated $1 trillion in USD sales this year. It's a lot of money, but is it surprising? I, for one, have been lured into the realm of social shopping on one too many occasions. I find it fascinating how B2C commerce has evolved, and the integration, I guess, between the global platform companies and the brands have helped create this like social shopping experience that's very seamless with end-to-end payment transactions. It's a fully immersive, fun experience, and it's at your fingertips through the phone. The mix then between the tailored push content and then the seamless end-to-end payments for me is a game changer because it's speedy. You don't need to exit to go into like new tabs, etc., to complete a transaction. And I find that products are a lot easier to find, simple to pay for, and it just means that it's quicker to buy across the digital platforms. I'll give you an example. So the Ninja air fryer. Does anybody have an air fryer?
Absolutely.
So the acclaimed product of the year, a product that I toyed with on many occasions. Will I get it? Will I not? Will it save my busy family life or will it not? But actually the decision was very, very quickly made for me due to the big brother watchful eye of social commerce that was carefully monitoring my social behaviours and my purchasing trends. And let's just say the algorithm, the reduced price point, made it really, really easy and sealed the deal for me. Another point is around social influencers. So I was definitely influenced by some of the social influencers that I follow. And remarkably, a third of all US consumers cite influencers as being the reason for the purchasing trends. As referenced up front, social commerce markets marry product discovery with purchases to create these irresistible shopping experiences. Ryan, can you outline how Google Shopping are leading in this space?
Yes, so as we know, one of Google's largest social platforms is YouTube. And YouTube video has become a much more prominent way for retailers to reach their audience in the past few years. Often driven in the past by brand advertising, but more recently performance advertising, where again you're closer to that level of purchase intent. So we've looked at the different way consumers consume media today, and its short form video has become a prominent trend over the past few years. And Google Shorts, which was released a few years ago, but it's really grown in prominence in the past year, I would say. And it's a really engaging short form content, and it's growing at a very fast rate at the moment in terms of user activity through YouTube as a broader platform, but YouTube Shorts is really engaging and picking up a new user base at the moment. So in terms of how we want that platform to enable consumers and the content creators, what Google has been doing is rethinking how content creators can activate on that platform. So for example, in the past, content creators got a portion of overall subscriptions and viewership. That has shifted since February of this year, where Google have introduced a model where 45% of the income generated through these high subscription channels, 45% of that revenue will go to the creator. This is game changing for the creators in terms of it will expand the creator universe. More creators will want to get involved. But also there's a different feature base as well. So one additional feature that's there is product feeds. And this is where Google Shopping comes in, because you build your feeds through Merchant Center and Google Shopping, and that now through Performance Max that I mentioned earlier is integrated through these various platforms. YouTube Shorts is the most dominant social platform at the moment for Google, and these new product features allow creators and influencers to integrate their shopping feeds. If they have products in their own shop, they can integrate that and surface that product while they're talking. And then make sure that there is an integration, you can buy the products directly. And this, again, is merging the existing platforms that Google have, the existing social platforms, the emergence of video as short-form video is a really engaging format. And you can start to see this whole retail space becoming much more prominent in terms of the consumers see their key influencers you mentioned earlier, and the products that they want to sell. But there's also an affiliate program being introduced as well. So you can run an affiliate program and again earn through that way as well. So the whole ecosystem of consumers is being propelled by the new creator landscape, that they can monetize this as a creator. And we will continue to see more creators emerge in the future because of these new incentives in place as well.
Yeah, excellent. A new career path potentially, huh?
Exactly. Yeah.
Now on to sustainability. So a very important business imperative and strategic objective for many leading organisations. And I might pass to you firstly, Graham, just to see what you're seeing in that space for some of your clients, particularly from a social commerce perspective, and what strategies they're deploying.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a hot topic, and rightly so. What I see is the tag of sustainability on a function of a product, whether that's clothes or a sporting good, that is showing up on how it's tagged and how it features within a store, allowing customers to filter and choose that ahead of anything else. I think the next step is that lots of companies are being very transparent in their sourcing of goods, not only from their brand perspective, but from the workers and the downstream factories and their sustainability credentials. So the whole ecosystem is gaining more credibility rather than just a B-rated corp that has to flow all the way down through all sources and all suppliers to the business. So I think absolutely deserves a place in e-commerce as a choice that I want to make as a customer to choose more sustainable products over non-sustainable products.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I suppose, Ryan, on the Google side, it'd be really interesting to see what are Google doing in this space.
When we look at Google Shopping, when you search in shopping now, if you go into the shopping tab and other shopping properties that Google has, you will see that you can filter your search results and shop from a sustainability point of view. For example, if you look at home appliances and you want to buy a new dishwasher or other home appliance, you can sort by which appliances are most sustainable, which appliances use most energy, and which are most cost effective. So that's currently with home appliances, going to roll out to different categories in the coming months ahead. But again, this is further steps forward to think about consumers want sustainable options. When you're shopping, when you have a retail mindset, they're thinking about how do we encourage retailers, how do we encourage consumers online to think about sustainability. So Google is offering it front and center during your shopping experience and making sure that if you want to purchase sustainable, energy efficient products, you can do that. And it's giving you the filters and different ways of making that purchase.
Yeah, it's so progressive, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so to close, it'd be wonderful just to leave our audience with some tips around how to successfully ride this wave of social e-commerce. So I might pass to you first, Graham, just to maybe leave us with 3 tips, and then over to Ryan.
3 tips might be a challenge, but let me try and break it down into 3. I think ultimately we need an entrepreneurial mindset in the businesses. We need to be willing to test and learn and kind of see what's working and what's not. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. So that's just a philosophy that we generally need to have. And whether that's keeping a small bit of budget to try and test out new things. I think for me, the 3 things are customer data. You need to have your customer data in order. You need to have a way to manipulate and understand that data so that you can get to the right customers and find more customers like it. I think number 2 is consider your channels, what's working, and how you're going to expand into social commerce as an alternative or as a supplementary to your e-commerce. And I think the 3rd one is constant measurability. So to constantly look at what's working and to double down the effort to make that return more.
Brilliant, thank you. And to you, Ryan?
Sure, so I'll go with 3 as well.
Yeah.
The first is really to think about, and the way I look at this is, what are the consumer trends? What is shifting the market, and how do we adapt to that shift? And the first consumer trend that really I think about that from a Google Shopping perspective we need to adapt to is users are spending more time online. And when they're online, they're trying new products and new companies more often than what we've seen in the past. So the research I was looking at showed that because this shift in the desire to try new brands is being driven by value. Consumers want value. When they go in to say, well, okay, there's more brands on option because social commerce has offered this broader spectrum of new entrants into the market. There's more brands, there's more products on offer. What this means is, as retailers, they have to rethink, what is my audience? Because my audience is expanding. It might be a different age profile, it could be a different earnings profile.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you need to rethink your audience because more people will try to buy your product than what we've seen before. So that's one consumer shift we've really seen. The second one is more a consumer shift, but based on how they interact with search engines and based on the Google data I've looked at, that searches are becoming more specific. So one example is, in the past, if someone was looking for a wedding dress, in 2016, they looked for a wedding dress. That was the search query. In 2019, the search query was wedding dress guest. And then in the last year, that query has evolved into wedding dresses for a 50-year-old guest attending an evening event. So there's more natural language, and we know from generative AI, there's more natural language and chat engagement from users and online. So we're seeing that real emergence of natural language as part of the search. So again, retailers, how do they capture that? If someone's searching that for that longer search query, they know what they want. Therefore, as a retailer, you have to show that product earlier. In the past, you could show multiple products and let the search and the purchase journey continue for multiple steps. That journey is so much shorter now because users know what they want from the beginning. So again, a real consumer shift that we need to think about. The third is one that I'm most excited about because of the way that I shop, which is consumers are now much more focused on seeing images and have visual way of engaging with the product before they might buy it. And again, we've seen this through social commerce, that the products are being offered up by an influencer. The creator knows who their audience is, therefore they're creating products that they know their consumers want and make a visual offering. So what Google is doing to address that is, in Google Shopping, we've seen a much more visual way of engaging your products. So if you shop via Google Shopping, you'll see that there's much more visual formats to engage with. And one that's just launched recently, which I think is why I'm purchasing more shoes, is that in the past, you may have looked at 5 or 6 images of shoes online and tried to decide if you were going to buy these shoes. That was difficult because you don't have a full view of the shoes and you can't engage with it. We've now launched via Google Shopping a 3D format, which means that you can zoom in, zoom out of the shoe, look at the top, look at the bottom, spin it around, and get that feel if you're going to purchase it. You can complement that with augmented reality. So AR means you can try the shoes on, look at it through your mobile device and see, do these shoes fit me? Look at it in the mirror, do they actually work for my style? So all of these changes are really influencing how we engage with products online. And what machine learning is doing is making it easier for retailers. So again, in the past, a retailer had to upload hundreds of images to create a 3D image. So you look at that 3D image, it seems quite simple, but that requires hundreds of images and advanced technology to do that. Google has introduced machine learning. You only need a handful of images as a retailer of your pair of shoes. You upload that, machine learning does the rest. It completes the picture and creates this 3D way of engaging with the product. And what we've seen through this engagement is that visual format means 50% more likelihood of converting and buying the product compared to static images. So this evolution of more visual images and the other consumer trends, I think creates a much more exciting way of engaging. Social commerce is primed to take advantage of this because they have an engaged audience. The influencers know how to reach that audience, and the creators are adapting the products they show, the products they wear, and making that real engagement to the point where, you know, and as Graham mentioned, this level of social engagement is only at the very early stages. And I think now the technology has caught up,
Yeah.
the audience is there, we're going to see it much more in the future.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think like the power of like immersive technologies and AR, like particularly even I find with like sunglasses, which are very difficult to purchase without like actually trying them on. But I have successfully purchased a pair recently, and it's like to put them on, then obviously to use the optical scanning to see actually, is it going to suit my face shape? Is it going to suit my eye shape, etc.? And it's like it's working for consumers, and then you're having that increase in conversion rates. So listen, I would like to thank you both for your time today. I thought it was a very thought-provoking session, and thank you for being so kind with your time. And I look forward to seeing what the future holds. Thank you very much. And now I will pass back to Daryl. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nicola. And thanks to everyone who's joined us today. I think that has been an absolutely fascinating session. If anyone has any queries or wants to reach out, please do so. And we look forward to seeing you at next year's TMT Predictions event.